What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Daily Rollup. My name is Kagan Dunlap, and Monday through Friday, we put together 5 to 7 short videos of things happening around the world that maybe you don't know about. So welcome back for those of you that were here before and have enjoyed these videos in the past and want to see more. And welcome to the channel for those of you that are coming here for the first time. Without further ado, let's get right into it. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff arrived in Moscow on August 6 of 2025 in order to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin to discuss the efforts to end the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Now, this is the 5 times so far that Witkoff has visited Russia since President Donald Trump took office, and he's been a key figure in the U.S.-Russia negotiations aimed at securing some sort of a peaceful resolution to the war in Ukraine. Now, the meeting, which lasted around 3 hours, was described as, quote, very constructive and useful by Putin's aide. And then after the meeting concluded, President Donald Trump posted something on Truth Social saying that the talks were, quote, highly productive, stating that he updated European allies and that everyone agrees this war must come to a close. However, some other senior White House officials indicated that secondary sanctions on Russia were still expected to be implemented by August 8th of 2025, and there was still no tangible ceasefire progress that was reported. However, there were some talks about a temporary truce, like a limited truce. For example, such as halting Russian missile and drone strikes in Ukraine in exchange for Ukraine pausing attacks on Russian border regions like Kursk and Belgorod, which could be a short-term de-escalation step, though it wouldn't address any of the territorial disputes that are still happening as far as like Ukrainian territory, Russian territory. Some insider sources have said that Steve Witkoff had proposed some sort of ideas that were deemed relatively acceptable by Moscow, including a truce rather than a full peace agreement, de facto recognition of Russia's territorial gains by postponing resolution of borders for 49 to 99 years, lifting sanctions on Russia, long-term resumption of U.S. imports of Russian gas and oil, no guarantees against NATO expansion, and no U.S. commitment to halt military aid to Ukraine, though Russia reportedly accepts this. Now, essentially, that package that was proposed was aimed to kind of freeze the conflict in place without any type of formal concessions from Kyiv, although it's unclear if Russia's going to fully accept this. Now, apparently, in addition to this, there's been discussions, like formal discussions, that are going to have a direct meeting between President Trump and President Putin, and they're trying to figure out potentially meeting up even as early as next week, maybe. Now, while this meeting shows that the U.S. and Russia are still trying to engage in talks, people still remain pretty skeptical of any type of long-term resolution so far. The Pakistani Air Force recently conducted a precision airstrike against a high-value target that's known to be affiliated with Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan, a terrorist organization that's known for its insurgent activities against the Pakistani state. This took place on August 6th of 2025, and according to Pakistani sources, they targeted his hideout directly, with reports indicating that there were no civilian casualties and minimal collateral damage. Now, some sources also indicated or linked Abu Bakr to the Balochistan Liberation Army, which is another militant group that operates in Pakistan's southwest, though his primary association appears to be with the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan. Now, Abu Bakr was identified as the mastermind behind a deadly bombing on June 28th of 2025 in North Waziristan, Mir Ali area, where a bomber rammed an explosives-laden vehicle, or a VBIED or VBID, into a Pakistani military convoy, which resulted in the deaths of at least 13 to 16 soldiers and injuring over 24 other people, including civilians and children that were affected by the blast's shockwave. This also caused nearby structures to collapse as a result of the explosion as well. Now, the Tehrik-i-Taliban Pakistan Hafiz Gul Bahadur faction claimed responsibility for the assault, marking it as one of the most deadly incidents in a surge of militant violence in Pakistan's northwestern border regions since the Taliban's resurgence in 2021 in Afghanistan. Following the June 28th bombing, Abu Bakr was also implicated in the targeted murders of members from local peace committees, tribal groups comprised of elders and leaders who oppose TTP activities and advocate for reconciliation or anti-militant efforts. Now, these types of attacks are stereotypical of insurgencies because they're trying to, like terrorist organizations, because they try to invoke terror on people and on communities to intimidate them and disrupt any type of peace initiatives in the region. I'm starting to think that the United States has an espionage problem. Apparently, on August 6th of 2025, a 22-year-old U.S. Army soldier, Taylor Adam Lee, was arrested in El Paso, Texas, and charged with serious national security offenses related to an alleged attempt to provide classified information about the M1A2 Abrams tank to Russia. Yes, Russia. Now, Taylor Adam Lee is an active duty service member stationed at Fort Bliss with a top secret, sensitive, compartmented information security clearance, or TSSCI, and is accused of seeking Russian citizenship in exchange for sensitive military data, which raises more questions about insider threats from the United States, specifically the U.S. military. Now, Lee, who appears to have served as a tank crewman based on his access to Abrams-related materials and documents, allegedly began his efforts in May of 2025 by attempting to establish contact with representatives of Russia's Ministry of Defense. By June of 2025, he had transmitted export-controlled technical information about the M1A2 Abrams online, and then he explicitly offered his assistance to Russia, stating in communications that, quote, "The USA is not happy with me for trying to expose their weaknesses," end quote. And then additionally, he also said, quote, "At this point, I'd even volunteer to assist the Russian Federation when I'm there in any way," end quote. This is part of a broader stance that Lee took, is expressing his dissatisfaction with the United States and a desire to aid a foreign adversarial nation. Now, by July of 2025, Lee had escalated his activities up to a point of meeting in person with an individual that he believed to be a Russian intelligence officer, which is likely part of an undercover FBI operation. During this encounter, he allegedly handed over an SD card containing documents and information on the M1A2 Abrams, another armored fighting vehicle, and other various combat operations. Several of these included controlled technical data that Lee was not authorized to share, and some of them were marked as controlled unclassified information, with explicit warnings against dissemination of said information. Now, Lee even expressed and acknowledged the fact that these were sensitive documents and materials, but did it anyway. Then on July 31st, he went even further when he delivered what appeared to be a tank part to a storage unit in El Paso, messaging his contact afterwards with the words, "Mission accomplished." Basically, he was trying to share information that could potentially expose vulnerabilities of the Abrams tank and things like that, which is a pretty critical U.S. asset because it's our main battle tank. And we've also supplied a lot of Abrams to Ukraine in their, in defense of their country against Russia. And then by August 6th, he was arrested by federal authorities and made his initial court appearance in El Paso. Now, he's currently facing two primary charges. One is attempted transmission of national defense information to a foreign adversary under the Espionage Act. And then the second one is attempted export of controlled technical data without a license under the Arms Export Control Act. If he's convicted, he could face up to life in prison, though exact penalties are going to depend on the specifics of the case. And the investigation is being led by the FBI's Washington field office with support from the FBI's El Paso field office and the U.S. Army Counterintelligence Command. Either way, he's probably going to end up in briefs going forward every time we have an annual training PowerPoint presentation about insider threats. So on August 6th, when there was an active shooter incident on Fort Stewart, there were 6 soldiers that stepped up to subdue the shooter and stop the spree from continuing. And today, on August 7th of 2025, those 6 soldiers were awarded the Meritorious Service Medal by the Secretary of the Army, Dan Driscoll himself. Now, the soldiers' names are Staff Sergeant Aaron Turner, who was the first person to tackle the shooter, and then Master Sergeant Justin Thomas, First Sergeant Joshua Arnold, Staff Sergeant Melissa Taylor, Staff Sergeant Robert Pacheco, and Sergeant Eve Rodart. I apologize if I butchered your name. I did the best I could. I'm glad that they took the time to recognize these soldiers because they 100% deserved it. Now, I want to go into a little bit more detail as to what role each of these soldiers played in this prevention of this crime from going further. So, Staff Sergeant Aaron Turner was the first person to engage the shooter when Radford opened fire in the headquarters building. Turner, acting on instinct, physically tackled him to the ground. This initial action action disrupted Radford's attack, which prevented further immediate harm and created an opportunity for other people to assist him. Turner's quick thinking and bravery were critical in stopping the shooter's rampage early. Now, Master Sergeant Justin Thomas was among the 5 soldiers who helped join Turner to restrain Radford after the initial tackle. His role involved helping subdue and secure the shooter, ensuring Radford could no longer pose a threat. Master Sergeant Thomas's actions contributed to maintaining control of the situation, which allowed the group to safely disarm and detain Radford until authorities arrived. Now, First Sergeant Johnson Arnold's role was he also assisted in restraining Radford as a senior non-commissioned officer, and his leadership likely helped coordinate the group's efforts to keep the shooter pinned and neutralized. Arnold's involvement also ensured the team worked cohesively to prevent any further violence while maintaining order in the chaotic aftermath of the shooting. Staff Sergeant Melissa Taylor played a dual role in the incident. She helped restrain Radford along her fellow soldiers, ensuring that he remained subdued. Additionally, Taylor provided immediate first aid to the wounded, leveraging her training to stabilize victims until medical personnel arrived. Her ability to multitask under pressure was vital in saving some of these lives. Then you have Staff Sergeant Robert Pacheco. Now, Pacheco was part of the group that helped pin Radford down after Turner's tackle, and his physical contribution to restraining the shooter ensured that Radford could not break free or continue his attack. Pacheco's quick response helped secure the scene and allowed other people to focus on aiding the injured. And then lastly, you have Sergeant Eve Rodarte. I think it's Rodarte. Apologize if I'm butchering that. Now, Rodarte joined the effort to restrain Radford and, like Taylor, also provided first aid to the victims. Her actions in both subduing the shooter and rendering medical assistance were crucial in addressing the immediate needs of the situation, from neutralizing the threat to ensuring the wounded received prompt care. Now, obviously, the courage, the bias for action, and the teamwork that all of these soldiers showed in this incident played a major role in preventing any further deadlier outcome. So good on you guys. 100% earned this award, and I'm glad that they recognized you for everything that you did to prevent any further death or destruction. The Army is lucky to have you. So I wanted to talk to you guys about the fact that it is Purple Heart Day in America on the 7th of August of 2025. Every August on the 7th, Purple Heart Day is observed in the United States, and that's dedicated to honoring service members who are awarded the Purple Heart Medal, whether they were awarded it posthumously or whether they were awarded it as a result of wounds that they sustained in combat. It commemorates the creation of the Purple Heart Medal, which is the oldest military decoration that's still being awarded to service members in America. Now, this day serves as a solemn reminder of the sacrifices that soldiers, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, sailors, Marines, everybody has made in defense of the nation. It symbolizes heroism, honor, patriotism, and also the physical and emotional toll that war takes on people. Now, Purple Heart Day is observed on August 7th of every year because this was the date that was chosen by George Washington to establish the Badge of Military Merit, which was the predecessor to the modern-day Purple Heart. And that was established on August 7th of 1782 during the Revolutionary War. Now, it's not known as a federal holiday, so government offices and businesses always remain open on Purple Heart Day. However, it is recognized through various events and ceremonies across the nation, especially at the Department of Defense. Now, like I said, the origin of this medal was on August 7th of 1782 when General George Washington, as the current commander-in-chief at the time, decided that he wanted to have a badge of military merit that was awarded to the Continental Army. Now, this was a heart-shaped piece of purple silk edged in silver braid and embroidered the word, quote, merit. It was designed to recognize soldiers for singularly meritorious action, and was one of the first awards that was available to enlisted soldiers and non-commissioned officers, which broke the tradition of honors reserved for officers. Now, only 3 known recipients were awarded during the Revolutionary War, and that was Sergeants William Brown, Elijah Churchill, and Daniel Bissell. Now, after that war ended, the badge fell into disuse. Now, by the 1930s, there were efforts that were brought about to revive the badge and revive the award because World War I had such a massive toll on us, and we lost a lot of people and a lot of people got wounded. So in 1931, General Douglas MacArthur pushed for its redesign, and on February 22nd of 1932, which was Washington's bicentennial birthday, the Purple Heart, the modern-day version of the Purple Heart, was officially established by the War Department General Order Number 3. The new medal medal featured a Purple Heart with a gold border and a bust of George Washington and his coat of arms on the reverse. Now, it was initially for the Army and the Army Air Corps, but it was extended to all branches in 1942. Until 1944, it was only awarded for commendable actions, but since then it's been exclusively awarded to those who've been wounded or killed in action. Now, the award's eligibility is expanded over time through executive orders and various laws. For example, in 1962, it included actions involving friendly foreign forces or hostile acts. In 1984, it covered terrorist attacks and peacekeeping. And then in 1996, it allowed for friendly fire wounds under certain conditions. There were also retroactive awards that were given to veterans of earlier conflicts like the Civil War and World War I, as long as they were alive to apply in the 1930s. Now, there were an estimated 1.9 to 2 million Purple Hearts that have been awarded since its modern inception, and about 430,000 of them that were awarded posthumously. During World War II alone, over 1 million were manufactured, and stocks remain for current conflicts like those in Iraq and Afghanistan. Either way, the Purple Heart is a very significant award, and there's a lot of benefits that people are awarded or given when they receive these things as well, like actual tax benefits and things like that. The bottom line is that Purple Heart Day is an important day because it recognizes people that made either the ultimate sacrifice or sacrificed a lot in defense of the nation. And it's a good way for us to be able to recognize the sacrifices that they made and exactly what the cost of freedom really is. It appears that an Israeli drone strike targeted a vehicle on the Anjar Masna Road in Lebanon's eastern Bekaa Valley near the border of Syria on August 7th of 2025. There's been a bunch of footage coming out from the scene depicting a car fully engulfed in flames and emitting a thick black smoke with debris scattered across the roadway and all kinds of stuff like that. There's a bunch of people that were standing by recording it on their phones and bystanders that were there recording the situation. The strike appears to have completely destroyed the vehicle, obviously, as it was completely engulfed in flames, though there's no details on any casualties or the identities of the people they were targeting. My guess, just a guess, is that maybe they believe that person had ties to Hezbollah in some way, or maybe they were linked to Hezbollah, which is a state-sponsored terrorist group up there. So that would be my assumption. However, there's nothing else further about this. So I guess we'll have to wait and find out. So a helicopter crashed into a barge on the Mississippi River near West Alton, Missouri and Alton, Illinois around 11 a.m. on August 7th of 2025, which resulted in a big fireball and a fire upon impact. Now, the crash occurred at mile marker 200 on the upper Mississippi River close to the Melvin Price Locks and Dam after the helicopter apparently struck the power lines over the water, causing it to crash down onto the barge, igniting a fire and visible smoke everywhere. Now, the initial reports that have come out is saying that 2 people died in the incident, as confirmed by the Alton Fire Department, though details on their identities are still unclear and they have not been publicly reported currently. The other strange part about this whole thing is the fact that the barge was apparently carrying chemicals and potential environmental or safety risks, which prompted a hazmat response because there was a bunch of like flammable, crazy chemicals on board. Now, emergency crews from both Missouri and Illinois, including fire departments, EMS, and state police, quickly responded to this with boats and ground units in order to manage the fire and secure the area. Now, the exact cause of what caused this crash, as far as like beyond the power line collision, is under investigation, and this is developing right now. So I'm sure that there's going to be a lot more coming out throughout the day. So that's it for the daily Rollup for the day, guys. I appreciate you joining. I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you're still sticking around right now, that means you're one of the real ones. Please let us know in the comments what you thought about this video below. If you thought that there was something we did well, something we could improve upon, or something you liked about it, just let us know. And we will continue to do these Monday through Friday. And, you know, in the meantime, we'll see you guys in the next video.